Review Committee.
This meeting is being recorded.
Sorry. Let me just do this. Okay, we'll start again. This is the Tuesday, January 17th, 2023 meeting of the Architectural Review Committee of the City of Palm Springs. Planning Director, please do roll call.
Member Dozy.
Present.
Member Lockyer.
Here.
Member McCoy is excused. Member Paline is excused. Member Thompson.
Here.
Member Walsh.
Here.
Vice Chair Rotman is excused. And Chair Jakeway.
Here.
We have 5 members present and we have a quorum.
Thank you. And I would like to, for the record, state that Dan Thompson is acting as a full voting and participating member in tonight's meeting. Could we have a staff report on the posting of the agenda, please?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Our agenda was posted on Thursday, January 12th in accordance with state law and city policy.
Thank you. Does the committee have any revisions to the agenda? I would like to suggest that item number 5, request by William Krieger for major architectural application at 205 Ridge Mountain Drive, be moved to the consent agenda. Does anybody on the committee have any items or issues with that item where they would not like that to be on the consent agenda? Okay, thanks. And then as part of the consent agenda, item number 1, request by EMD Construction for a house at 2233 North Vista Drive. We do want to note that the glass balcony rail seems to be lower than code requires. So we want to make sure that when this project is reviewed for permit, that the code height is met, but that the design of the railing stays as what we see now. And we want to make sure that both projects that we're putting on the consent agenda show the location of solar panels on their roof when they bring those for permit, and that staff reviews the design and location of those panels. So having said that now, do we have a motion to accept the consent calendar, which is item number 1 and item number 5?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, John Walsh. Second by?
I'll second.
By Dan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. And Mr. Krieger, I'm hoping pronouncing your name right, but it's a great project. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Unfortunately, you're muted, but we just thank you. Okay, moving ahead. Unfinished business. Item number 2, request by William Eden, owner for a major architectural application for a 3-unit condominium development named Eden Palm Springs, located at 101 West Via Olivera Drive. Could we have a staff report, please? Wait, I'm sorry, let me back up. I forgot to offer a chance for members of the audience to comment, and members of the audience at this point can comment on items which are not on today's agenda but are under the purview of this committee. Are there any members of the audience that would like to comment on anything in general? Okay, seeing that, we can move ahead now to item number 2 under unfinished business. Could we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Let me get the PowerPoint to come up. Can you see it?
Yes, full screen.
Great. Okay. So as you read into the record, the Architectural Review Committee reviewed this project back in December and had a few requests for the applicant to go back and rework some of the designs. So just to orient everyone, this is on West Via Olivera. It's a vacant lot almost at the corner of North Palm Canyon Drive and West Via Olivera. So the Planning Commission approved the project back in the fall with the CUP, a tentative track map, major development permit for the construction of 3-unit condos, and AMM for setback reductions on the front yard and the side yard, and then ARC to review the major architectural, which ARC did on December 5th. So at that meeting, you asked the applicant to do a few things, restudy the front gate, study the color and the carport design, landscape, provide details on the roof drainage, and then study the proposed water feature. So we'll go through these quickly one by one. So restudy the front gate. In your packet, there was a new designs. This is a design of the top image is the new design. The lower image, the bottom image was the other design, which had a it's metal with perforated circles, and that meets what the intent of the ARC was for this specific item. The carport was another discussion item. In these drawings, you'll see that it was a taller carport, a larger structure with larger beams and the undercarriage of the carport. They've revised it, made it simpler. Now it is CMU columns with metal and a simple metal roof, and it's lower. There was a lot of discussion about how this was viewed from the street, and also if you're inside the house against the clear story windows, the larger carports may have been blocking any kind of views or light into the building. So as I mentioned in the packet, there are details of the steel tube, the metal carport roof, the Angelus that will be used as the posts of the carport itself. A landscape plan, you discuss some maybe vertical plants along the side walls, and then planter beds in the front parking area. This is a revised landscape plan. They've added 6 citrus trees on the side of the side yards of the buildings. They've added more grass on the northwest corner, and then revised the planter bed landscaping to be ocotillos to add height and texture to the front. And then also they moved some of the palm trees, 2 palm trees to the front, and eliminated the water feature, which we'll discuss further. So this is a design. The top image here is the new proposed. Bottom is what was previously reviewed with the 4 trees towards inside the gate. Now they've been moved to make a better entry, and the applicant will be able to talk in just a second. Roof drainage, you asked about how the roof drains. I'll let the designer and the architect describe, but there is a detail in the packet about the overall roof plan. And then you asked about the water feature. So the water feature has been eliminated. This is the arrival entry into the building showing the 2 palm trees. Now there'll be Angelus block that's here. And then you'll understand the carports as they relate to the building itself and the new front entry gate. Drawing of the previously approved, you'll see that the water feature was at the corners of the entry. Now they've been eliminated. Other things that the applicant would like to do is revise the color scheme, and also the bay parking will be stamped concrete and decorative striping. The color scheme that's proposed is this color scheme, which was in your packet. The orange is more of a pinkish orange, and this is what was previously reviewed. And I'll let the applicant describe that project on that change. So once again, this is the overall 3D image of what the buildings will look like. So Chair, that concludes my report, and the applicant is here to answer any questions.
Glenn, quick question. Are we reviewing the signage as part of this approval?
There's no, the signage was just as sort of images to show where it could go, but a sign would be approved at staff level based upon the sign code.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody on the committee have any questions for the staff?
I have a question for Glenn. Glenn, could you go to the site plan? Because there was some discussion about the planter width behind the pool area. Was there any changes?
Let me get there. Here on the very far southern end,
Yes.
I would have to refer to the applicant. I don't know if this was changed or not.
All right. Thank you.
Got a question.
Was that Sean?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Glenn, if you mentioned this, I know we had questions about the carport design. Did you talk about that?
Briefly.
Sorry, could you go over that one more time?
Right. So let me get to the slides here. You can see them, right? Let's go to the carport design. Well, in these designs, so it is 2 precision block columns with a metal frame with a roof structure that is metal standing seam.
Mm-hmm.
More simple than the previously reviewed, which
Gotcha. And less slope to it.
or right, and it does not block these clear story windows behind as much.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, I see that the applicant is here. Please, you have 10 minutes to give us a description of the changes and revisions.
Hi there, Design Review. I'm Jeff Juraski. Zaida is our architectural consultant on this project. We implemented everything that was on our directly addressed that back planter. We just changed the material in there. We've changed it to agaves. It's a 30-inch approximate height raised planter along the back wall, which is the south wall. And we just have a regimen of agaves in there. That element is intruding on that space in the rear yard of unit number 2, in case you're curious what that other coloration was. But we had some great ideas from Design Review last time coming through, getting rid of the water features, which we did, and created a little bit of a canopy condition there at the entryway. As you walk in, obviously the front gate needed change just for clearances. And some dwarf citrus on the side yards. And we changed the pathway for those that are coming to the backyard, the pool maintenance people, landscape people. So we got rid of the pads and went to a continuous concrete sidewalk condition so that one can access all 3 yards in the back there from either the front or the side yards. So do you want to add anything there?
Yes, regarding the carport design, we lowered the height. So the bottom of these clear story windows, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. These bottom of these clear story windows are 8 feet from finished floor. The carport, because the grade is sloping, the carports are 9 feet tall because there is a foot difference between the grade. So that put our carports right at the bottom of those clear story windows so they can still maintain their view. And they're a little bit more open. There is a steel tube frame that is gonna be painted to match the steel fascia and the building. And then we're gonna put a standing seam on the roof and then another panels on the bottom. So those will be white. And the block will be matching the trash enclosure and the block that is going on the retaining walls. To talk a little bit more about the fascia detail, we're not doing gutters, we're sloping the roof to the edge of the roof. So we're creating a detail of exposed steel to fascia. So we're gonna put some energy board with the new Title 24 above the sheathing, and then some PVC or some single ply PVC roof system. It will drip over here, and then the water will drip on the fascia, and then we'll put a drip here, so the water will come over here. And then the bottom will be plaster, which match the colors of the building. So that's all I have to add to the appraisal. Any other questions?
Do you want to talk about the color?
Yes.
The-
That's you.
I was going to say the color is pretty similar to the previous color, only this is a little more muted because it's a desert palette color. A little more muted, not as quite as bright, and happens to be the color of the year from one of the paint companies. So my client really enjoyed that particular color, so we went ahead and employed it. That's the only change to the material palette from the initial package.
Oh, and then the decorative concrete in the parking spots. You can see it on the landscape plan. So we created a little saw cut joint pattern on the concrete, and it will be acid washed. And we're gonna add a color to this. So this B is this darker color, and the parking stalls will have the little joints with the saw cut joint, and then the lighter color.
Okay, does anybody on the committee have questions? Well, before we do that, do we have any public comments from the audience? Is there anybody in the audience who would like to make comments on this project? Okay, does anybody on the committee have questions for the applicant?
I have a question
Yes.
for the lighting of the carports. How is that achieved?
Yes, so we didn't change the light source. It is a light fixture that aims the light towards the inside of the carport, and it's gonna be placed at the end of the carport. So it's not gonna be aiming towards the street, it will be aiming towards the building.
Now, will that be recessed, or will you see that, you know, based on the elevation view that you showed us?
It will be visible. It's surface mount.
Okay.
I had a question. I don't see on the elevations or the plan gas meters, electric meters, or mailboxes. Could you walk us through those?
We don't have located any utilities other than transformer. We'll have to do that once we hire the engineer team.
What about mailboxes?
Mailboxes. We don't have it on the plan either, but Jeffrey, do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, can they be delivered directly to the doors of the individual units? If not, we would have to have some sort of box there, probably in conjunction with the trash enclosure structure and the signage over there.
Right here.
Wall mount. Yeah.
Yeah, I know
Awesome.
it's something you'll have to probably work out with the post office, but I think certainly for security, if it were behind your gate would be the best, but then I don't know how the mailman has access unless he has a universal code to operate the gate, but.
We obviously we haven't addressed that yet, Tom.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Comments from the committee in general?
I guess I'll start. I like the improvements that they've made on the project. I think on the side areas, well, while the dwarf citrus are admirable and will provide some fruit, I still think we need some vertical trees, that grow taller and will fit within that space. And there's a variety of species that are available that, can get up 15, 20, 25 feet, I think, in height.
Are you talking citrus, Tommy, or are you talking?
No, I mean, within the acacia species, or even, if you did want to add a couple palm trees on the sides. If we look at the side elevation, I think there's a slide number 25. It looks like Zaida has there that shows the sides.
Right here?
Yeah, because we only have 8 feet there, and that on the west side is up against a C1 zone, so there's literally no setback for whatever might come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they could be back towards the, where the building steps up.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the improvements.
Thank you, Tom. Other comments? I have a brief comment. I really like the improved design of the carport. It's very light and elegant. I think it would be sad if we saw a light fixture mounted to the bottom of the ceiling of the steel roof. And I would hope maybe you would investigate if you could mount that light fixture on the back side of the beam that's supporting the roof. And that way you wouldn't be seeing that fixture at all from the street.
Not a problem. Now they have very good LED lights. So we have a 2-inch cavity, which we're gonna design a steel frame to mount the roof and the metal panels in the ceiling. So we have a 2-inch opportunity to put some low profile LEDs as well. So if that's one of your requests, we can address that.
Yeah, I just think it's so elegant right now with the very thin profile of the roof and then the little standoffs that sit on top of the steel beam to support the roof. If we added something that kind of mucked that up a bit, would take away from that simplicity. So if that could be either on the back of the beam, or if there is an opportunity to recess it up into the structure, either one, just so we don't see the fixture from the street.
Right, so there is a transom beam going from here to here.
Yep.
So that same light can be mounted behind it, aiming towards there.
Perfect, perfect. Any other questions, or I should say comments or items of discussion from the committee members? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to approve with the changes that we see on this latest version as listed.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Dosey. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks. Jeff, I want to compliment you and the team. You listened well and you did a good job to start and a better finish. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Oh, thank you so much, you guys. Appreciate it.
Okay, we will move ahead now to that unfinished business. No, we've got one more. Pinnacle Palm Springs, item number 3, request by Pinnacle Palm Springs for a major architectural application for the construction of a 3,627 square foot house on a hillside lot and administrative modification to reduce the front and rear setbacks located at 1711 Pinnacle Point. We have a staff report, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself from this project as I have worked with the developer on some previous projects in the area.
Okay, Tom, thank you.
You have a quorum?
Question for Chris. That leaves us just with 3 members on this item. So would we need to continue it?
Do we have 4 with Member Thompson voting?
No.
No.
Oh,
yes, we do, Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I believe we have quorum. That's,
Yep,
we're glad
thanks.
Dan's here.
Okay. Then staff report, please.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So once again, this project was also reviewed on the December 5th meeting. by the ARC. Let me get a change. And at that meeting, you requested that the house meet the rear yard setbacks, that you study the west-facing facade to provide better solar control, this color scheme to be darker, and revise the roof parapet on the front elevation. To orient everyone, this again is Lot 1 in Pinnacle Point, which is a 10-unit subdivision off of Booker Trail, and we are looking at which is in the red box. So from the 12-5 meeting, you asked the applicant to revise and move the house out of the rear yard setback. So in looking at the plans that were presented to you in your packet, the house has been moved out of the rear yard setback. However, when that occurs, it pushes the house closer to the street. And that results in a 10.5-foot front yard setback to some of these wall elements, but a 15-foot setback to the structure itself. In looking at the previously reviewed project, the house was projecting 2 feet into the rear yard setback, 12'6", and 18 feet away from the street. So the house has been pushed farther to towards the street, which is allowed with the approval of an administrative minor modification. Let me go back. So the applicant is proposing that he keep the previously reviewed plan, meaning that the rear yard setback reduction be granted. So he would like to keep the site plan as that was presented in December. However, provided us, per your request, a revised site plan. You asked the applicant to study the eyebrow placement of the west-facing elevation to provide greater solar control. The top elevation shows a 9-foot long eyebrow versus a 6-foot one that was in the previously reviewed. So they have provided extension of the eyebrow to provide solar control of the west-facing facade. The color scheme to be darker. They have revised the color scheme, and when doing so, they've eliminated the stacked stone that was in the front elevation and moved to a rake stucco. You know, when you look at colors on a screen, they don't always look different. This is the previously original approval, but you'll notice that the Dunn-Edwards number has changed, which the main stucco color is a darker color. Provides the roof parapets over the garage. In the original scheme, there was a large facade that is above the great room in the kitchen. You asked the applicant to extend the parapet to provide greater interest and break up this large continuous wall. He's done that. And then in the roof plan, you can see that it extends the whole way across the front of the building. In the previous one, it did not do that. So there are some 3D elevations showing the building with the raked stucco on the front of the building instead of the stacked stone, the white stacked stone. Once again, the house sits higher than the road. So when you're driving up the street, the house will sit higher. So whether the house is at 10'6" or 12'6", it may have the same visual impact, because as you drive up the street, you're looking forward and the building is off to your left or right. So this image shows the larger overhang to provide solar control over the west-facing building or facade. Just scrolling through some of these images. Chair, that concludes my report, and the applicant is here for further discussion.
Thank you, Glenn. Does anybody on the committee have questions for staff? Okay, is the applicant here? You would have 10 minutes to present your revisions.
Brian, you there? There you go.
I'm here, but I think Bill was involved in the last meeting. I wasn't. He's here on the line. Bill, can you hear us? Oh, I see him down here. Do you have to allow him on your settings to allow someone calling in to, is there a setting that they need to do it or something? Because he's not, he's there.
He's one of the phone numbers?
Yeah, the 949-261-9000.
1 second. *6, push *6 on your phone. That is, I don't have the ability for someone joining by phone to unmute them. *6 is the way to do that.
Okay.
The symbol says he's here now.
He's there, but it's
He keeps losing the crossed off signal, so we're trying to make it happen.
Yeah, not quite sure.
Another phone number just joined. If you are trying to unmute yourself to speak to this item, please dial *6 on your phone. I think you're there now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, we are at the point of the agenda where we'd like the applicant to give us a description of the revisions that you've made.
Thank you. Glenn was pretty apt at addressing them. As starting from the top down, yeah, basically, if we may still have version 2 of the house setback, only 32 square feet of the house would physically be in the setback. So if that would give you consideration for that. As far as the others, we did, of course, extend the eyebrow as requested. We did make the colors darker, as we kind of discussed a little bit the last time. We increased that. And also we revised the roof parapet so there was more stepping and not a single step up to the highest point. And then we also did just the front elevation and the other side elevations as requested. So we tried to address all your requests. Hopefully we got on point. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Okay, thank you. Before the committee, we ask you questions at this point. Is there anybody from the public who would like to comment on this item? We don't see any. Okay, committee, do you have questions of the applicant? John Walsh.
Yeah, I just, as we're looking at the before and after the currently proposed, was any attempt made at absorbing a reduction of square footage within the house so that it would be compliant both with the front and the rear setback?
Well, like I said, we're only talking 32 square feet. In the house, the residence portion is only 3,100 square feet. And so we were trying to, obviously, as I kind of suggested in the last meeting, you know, have that straight line for the master bedroom situation and not shrink the master bedroom itself, because that's the one that would hurt the most if we tried to jog it in some fashion. We did look at it, but that's why I say we're concerned that we'd start to make the master bedroom too narrow in that direction. Cutting 2 feet up.
Thank you.
To address that same issue, I would think that you could move the back wall of the master bedroom so that it is out of the setback. And then once you do that, move the north wall of the bedroom where the sliding glass door is, move that into the patio another foot or two, and move where the door from the great room comes in towards a great room a foot or two. And you've solved getting the bedroom the exact same size that it is, but getting it out of the setback without needing to, encroach even further into the front setback. I think that's a very simple solution to just have a minor redesign to that corner. A question I have is, why did you choose to go from the stacked stone to the raked stucco?
Well, because trying to get a particular stone that would actually match out to the darker colors was rather a challenge, because we're trying to hit specific colors that are Dunn Edwards, and then trying to get a stone. When we were doing it contrasting with the white stone, it made more sense. But now that you had asked in the previous one that we bring all the colors down, it was a little trickier to try and find a stone that would actually match that out.
Okay,
and
I
work with colors.
I had another question. On the side yard to the east, you have a metal picket fence that's on top of the retaining wall. It looks really odd in the elevations to see that metal fence so tall against the side of the building. Is that metal fence truly required?
Yes, for safety for the pool and safety of the people on the uphill side, so they don't fall into the lot.
But it doesn't need to be 6 feet taller than the wall. It only needs to be 3 feet taller than the wall.
Well, nothing can be less than 42 inches if it's actually functioning as a guardrail.
Okay. Still better than 6 feet. Okay, and I would think the pool fencing could be handled way back at the back corner of the house. Doesn't have to be along that entire side of the house. Anybody else on the committee have questions for the applicant?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, discussion. Sean.
I'm just puzzled by the setback issue. It just feels like we asked to comply with the setbacks, and instead they just shifted the floor plan. Seems to me like it was just a matter of avoiding changing drawings. And so I don't get it. As an architect, I don't get it, because we don't do that. If there's a setback you have to comply to, and you have to adjust your plans to comply, then you do it. We don't rob Peter to pay Paul. So I don't understand.
Thank you. John, did you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, it would just echo what Sean was indicating there. I mean, basically, the setbacks shape your solution, and we just expect this is what we do. And it just seems like an easy requirement to integrate, and you would never even notice in terms of overall house square footage. So it's kind of hard to understand just the resistance to just comply.
Thank you. Dan, any comments?
Nothing that hasn't been said already.
Okay, thank you. Any other committee comments? Well, I agree with Sean and John that I just threw out an easy solution to correct the setback. I don't see any reason to give further setback variances. So I would think that the house could be designed to fit within those setbacks. We've already given them a setback reduction on the front to 15 feet across the entire lot.
Right.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion
Sean.
that we deny the project until it complies with the setbacks, and they have to adjust their drawings to do so.
We have a second?
Second.
Second, John Walsh. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
So, Chair, this item could be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days.
Okay, thank you. Okay, new business. Item number 4, A request by Jerry Johnson on behalf of VIP Motorcars for a minor architectural application for partial demolition and a 1,973 square foot addition and exterior alterations to an existing automotive dealership located at 4057 East Palm Canyon Drive. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, good evening. Let me share my screen here very quickly. Thank you and good evening. As introduced, this is the proposed project to Genesis Palm Springs, an existing automotive dealership, and applicants proposing partial demolition, addition, and then also exterior alteration to this building. This project site is an interior lot, which is a part of the East Palm Canyon Automotive Dealership Row. And this particular property is very unique in such a way that this private property includes a driveway which functions as a private road that connects all these dealership properties. And the project proposes the 1,933 square foot addition, and it proposes to increase the building height from the current 16 feet and 2 inches to 25 feet. This particular image was not included in the packet that was delivered to the ARC. This is just a conceptual design, and it's not the precise depiction of what's being proposed for this project, but it does include the design elements that are proposed. These are the images of the existing project site. The property currently has a shared access with adjacent property to the east, which is a Mercedes-Benz dealership located at 4095 East Palm Canyon. And the property also has an existing driveway access on the west side of the property. And this is just to show the existing conditions of the site. The existing building is 10,991 square feet, and it has a parking spaces located in the west side yard as well as the rear. The rear parking accommodates inventory parking and employee parking. And this is a proposed site plan with addition included. As you see, the project proposes to have a primary customer parking on the north side of the building, as well as the west side of the parking. And there will be an existing parking in the rear, as well as a service parking in the west side yard. These are existing. The project proposes addition of the east and the west wing, and it also proposes to push the building a little bit towards East Palm Canyon Drive side. As a part of the project, the applicants proposing landscaping for the parking areas. And even though the parking meets the code requirement in terms of quantity, it does not meet the proposed planting bed width of 9 feet. And also the project proposes only one type of plant material, which is red yucca, and no shade trees are proposed, while the zoning code requires them. And this is just to show the comparison of what's existing, what's proposed, as well as a proposed roof plan. As you can see, the proposed changes or demolition to the building is mainly in the front portion of the building. As the staff mentioned earlier, the project proposes addition of the east and the west wings. And the project also proposes this on the primary elevation, as well as a mechanical equipment screens on the rooftop. And this is to show what's existing and what's being proposed here. This is a north elevation, which is a primary elevation of the building. The project proposes this aluminum composite metal panels for the fascia, which extends quite a bit, 74 feet, as well as the expensive glazing system and vestibule And then also the installation of aluminum composite metal panels for the service area, which is the west wing. The color of the aluminum composite metal panel will be different for the fascia and the elevation treatment of the service wing. And this is the west elevation. The project proposes to demolish existing canopy structure and install 3 new garage doors, which will be metal, and then painting to match the color of the building. And as you see on this elevation, the project proposes rooftop mechanical equipment screens. And this is the east elevation. Again, similar treatments proposed. There will be an existing garage door opening, but the project also proposes to install a new garage door opening, as well as a heat unit will be attached to the east elevation of the primary building. And this is a south elevation of the proposed building, which is the rear, and it faces residential property in the back. Again, the similar material application and design treatments proposed for the elevation. And these are the materials that are proposed for the exterior of the building. Aluminum composite metal panels in a different color. Also, the glazing system was this 35% dark tinted film to control sun, and the metal mechanical screens proposed for the rooftop. And the proposed paint colors include the cyberspace darker gray and a network gray, which is a lighter gray. And this is the image of the plaster sample submitted by the applicant. Based on the submitted materials, the proposed building and site designs generally meet the required findings for architectural review approval, except for the following. Except for one, the proposed parking area planting beds do not meet the minimum planting bed width of 9 feet required by the zoning code. And then also the project proposes only 1 plant material for the new parking area planting area. And there's no shade tree proposed for such areas. And staff is recommending a set of conditions of approval. And the reason why is because the staff finds that the implementation of such conditions of approval would be appropriate to address minor concerns, and the implementation of the conditions will not alter the nature of the project or character of the proposed design. The project is in conformance with applicable zoning regulations and guidelines as conditioned. And for the reason, staff is recommending that the Architectural Review Committee adopt a resolution and approve the application subject to conditions of approval, which include but are not limited to the following. To convert the north end handicap space in the secondary customer parking area, which is going to be on the west side of the building, into a standard parking space and omit the adjacent walkway to provide a 9-foot planting bed. And then also increase the shared pathway adjacent to the handicap, and then also EV charging space to 8 feet to meet the code requirement. Second, increase the 7-foot width of the planting bed in the primary customer parking area, which is on the north side of the building, to 9 feet to meet the code requirement. And finally, increase the plant diversity and arrange the plants to achieve better composition in the planting beds and install shade trees in the planting beds to meet the code requirement. This concludes the staff presentation, and the staff and the applicant are both available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Noriko. Committee members, does anybody have questions for staff? No questions for staff. Is the applicant present? You would have 10 minutes to present your project. Please give us your name.
Jerry Johnson on behalf of VIP Motor Cars, and I'm pleased to be with you guys this evening. I got Chris Hector with me, and Chris and I together have developed this auto center that I think we're all very proud of. We got the Mercedes-Benz and As you guys are aware, Mercedes has been here on the corner of East Palm Canyon and Cherokee since 1972. So we just celebrated our 50th year as a corporation occupying this site. As you know, we've worked together over the years to develop just a wonderful world-class auto center with Porsche, BMW, and then last year we came to finalize the Hyundai building and revised building. I hope you guys have been able to be by and see that project, which turned out very nice. This is kind of an extension of that progression throughout the last decades. And Genesis has been housed with Hyundai. It's the luxury brand, just a tremendous product, and one that we're very proud to represent. But as part of the Hyundai project, we had to agree to move Genesis out. And so we have the building between Mercedes-Benz and Hyundai that we have worked with the international design intent of Genesis to develop a project that meets their design intent requirement, but at the same time fits on the site that we have in the city of Palm Springs and allows us to renovate the building that once housed our Infinity brand into a world-class Genesis facility. So many of the materials and much of the perspective of the facility are specified by Genesis, but we are happy to address questions that you might have in regard to a couple of the conditions of approval. On the 7-foot planter on the eastern side of the parking area, I'd just like to point out that we've made that 7 feet because of the layout of our parking spaces in front of the building. We also have, as Noriko pointed out, a planter between the East Palm Canyon and what's really on our property, but it looks more like a service drive. We have a planter also out there between the highways. So I would prefer not to increase the size of that planter that's currently at 7 feet for those reasons. And then the shade trees that she mentioned, I would also prefer not to have shade trees. We have palm trees, and shade trees provide a nesting habitat for some birds that don't work well with cars in regard to the mess that the trees make. So we do not have trees on the other frontage parts of, in regard to the parking, where the parking is for customers out front. So I'd prefer not to have the shade trees. I understand the plant diversification and diversity, and we'd be happy to do that, but would prefer not to have shade trees. Chris and I are available here for questions, and appreciate you guys considering this.
Thank you, Jerry. At this point is the time that members of the audience are available to make comments on the project. Do we have anybody from the public who would like to make a comment on this particular project? Okay, let's see if anybody on the committee has questions for the applicant.
I have one.
Yeah, Dan.
Hey, Jerry, I'm just curious. I'm just curious about, are you providing electric car chargers anywhere on your site?
We have 2 high-speed chargers, and forgive me, I just see your first name. So if you don't mind me calling you Dan.
That's fine.
I see that on the screen, but we have 2 high-speed chargers, one adjacent to that 7-foot planter, and then one on the west side by in the handicap stall, so they would also accommodate a handicapped person that had an electrical vehicle. Those are becoming they're no longer optional. Genesis is moving to a fully electric product line. And we will have these 3 bays that you see with squares or with rectangles as you pass through the service drive, and then to the left, those are called EV bays. Those are specifically for EV products and are designed to have all the necessary accommodations for that. So yes, we have 2 high-speed chargers as well as other chargers that will be back in the backside of the building.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Jerry, looking at the site plan here, in the, I guess it'd be the southeast corner, there's a building, freestanding building called EV Storage. Is that an existing building or is that new construction?
That actually is a new construction. What Genesis requires, and it's what's necessitated by your just operating model today, these batteries, I don't know if you guys have seen them, but they are enormous. And the batteries for the EVs, and you have to have a place to get them out of the elements when there's an issue with the batteries. So that's specifically for batteries for the EV product lines. We've chosen to make it disconnected. Just we kind of thought it was a little bit safer to have it separated from the rest of the operations. Not that that was required, but we chose to do that.
From the elevations, it appears that that building is made out of concrete block, unplastered, but the designation on the elevation drawings indicates that it is plastered. Could you clarify that? Is it a plastered building or do we see the exposed concrete block?
It's currently an exposed concrete block from the line of demarcation being the backside of the delivery area and the service drive. Everything back there is currently concrete block, and I think Genesis designates it as the EFIS. Yeah, as Chris was saying, I don't know if you could hear him, it has to be an EFIS material, so it will be retrofitted with a stucco finish.
There will not be any exposed block on the building when completed.
Great, thank you. And final question, on the roof plan and on the elevations, we can see a mechanical screen around the roof mounted equipment, but no details at all of the screen. And in fact, it seems to be kind of represented a little differently on one elevation than it is on the other elevation. That's certainly an important part of the design feature. Do you have a design detail of that mechanical screen?
Do we have one in the plans? It's a trapezium material.
Trapezium painted.
What does that mean, trapezium material? I'm not familiar with that.
I'll have to look at Chris on that one.
The best way to describe it, are you familiar with the material on the Porsche store? It's a metal material, and it's
kind of perforated,
not a straight flush finish. It goes in and out. It's trapezium.
Okay, I'm thinking
somewhat looks like a roof decking.
Right. Well, I'm sure that we're going to ask for a more specific detail on that, but that's something that can work through as a condition. Any other questions from the committee for the applicant? John Walsh.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just ask, it kind of caught my eye in terms of the building envelope. When I look at the roof plan, there's a skylight over a Zen garden. And I was just, did this come from corporate, or it strikes me that that's an awfully large skylight in Palm Springs.
Yes, that is a corporate requirement, is the Zen garden. Not that I don't want peace and Zen as well, but it is a requirement, and it was incorporated based on their mandate.
I wonder what the mechanical engineer thought.
We fought that battle ourselves in terms of that. We reminded everyone through the process that we're in Palm Springs, California, but there are certain things they would not waver on, and that'd be one of them. So
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As a related question to that, the walls of the showroom are entirely glass. So you've got a total glass box. That in itself is going to make the mechanical system stressed. Are there plans or designs for interior shading product that would come down on those windows at certain times?
Yes, as we did on Hyundai. Hyundai's a very similar, content of glass, and we put in power shades that roll down from the upper part of the ceiling, and in the morning the western shade, the eastern shades are drawn, and then in the afternoon the western shades are drawn, and it seems to work well. We did the same thing with our Audi building in Rancho Mirage when we did that building.
And those are inside of the building, inside of the glass.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Other committee member questions?
I have a couple.
Dan.
So Jerry, back in that building that you're going to build for the batteries, on the plans, it looks like it's block. So is that going to be stuccoed as well, or is it going to be block?
It will have to be stuccoed. Genesis mandates stucco.
And then the area that's between it and the building looks like a chain link fence area. Is it truly chain link fence?
No, there's a metal fence there, and it houses our storage tank, one of our storage tanks, and it will be painted to match the rest of the building, but it's not chain link.
Okay, what kind of metal fencing is it?
I think it's just sheet metal with a metal frame.
Right.
Okay. Because it kind of looks like it could be like a lattice work almost on the plan. I couldn't tell if it was solid or just a design element on the panel.
Dan, anything else?
No, that's it. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, Sean.
Yeah, so on the site plan sheet, it looks like, I'm trying to get my head wrapped around the landscape on the project and what you said about the birds being a nuisance, but it looks like a lot of the places along the frontage that's customer parking, including the 2 EV charging spaces. So is it like car detailing that was a concern?
No, the customer parking there on those two landscape noses is what are a question here. We have, if you see out by where the display parking is out closer to East Palm Canyon, that's what I was referring to. We have low planting materials there, and was the basis for the request that we not be required to expand the 7-foot planter on the eastern side. But in terms of the trees, we would not like shade trees in those, particularly in those 2 island noses for our customers.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of frontage on the project, and it's hard to imagine all this hard space and hard on hard surfaces without any landscape to soften this project up at all. Feels like it could use quite a bit of softening. I don't think there's a question in there for me, so just making a comment now.
Thank you, Sean. Any other committee questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. Committee discussion. Comments and suggestions from the committee, please.
I'll go ahead and start, kind of follow up with what Sean is talking about. You know, as this whole strip of dealerships has kind of evolved, you know, there's been changes in the landscape and the display areas of parking. That median island between East Palm Canyon and the frontage road now has become kind of a display area. And it almost feels like it needs a master landscape plan for that whole roadway, you know, that would include the parkway between East Palm Canyon and the drive where there's display areas. There's a variety of different plants. But if you look at the Porsche dealer and the BMW dealer, they've kind of established these date palm trees that are, you know, kind of going along the frontage there. And I think, and then it kind of falls off, you know, as you get a little further down towards Hyundai and now where this project is. And I think if they carried those down, you know, as part of the theme, so we could develop some continuity here, you know, in lieu of maybe shade trees in those planters, that would start, you know, it'll still provide shade, but it also visually start to tie the whole frontage together.
Thanks, Tom. Other comments from the committee? I have a comment regarding the front elevation. Could we have the front elevation put up on the screen, please? There. The roof that's over the entry doors project out from the main bulk of the building, 6 or 7 or 8 feet. I think that roof looks too wimpy. If the roof were made thicker, where the top of the roof were taken up to that horizontal window mullion, it would just give that entry building, I think, a little more strength and a little more importance. And other than that, I think it's an interesting project. And I totally agree with Tom's comment about getting a landscape concept, since this is under one ownership, to create a landscape concept along the frontage. Other comments? Sean, if you're talking, you're muted.
Yep. I
Okay,
might
thanks.
just add that it feels like it needs more landscape, more planting beds than even what's shown here. It's just, I'm just kind of surprised that this complies with the percentage and ratio. This just doesn't feel like a frontage that we're trying to create or promote in this city. And I wonder if some of this is just creep along the street, creep meaning evolution along just an evolutionary process along this sort of boulevard or row of car dealerships here that's sort of starting to level out and remove hints and traces of landscape, and it's just evolving in this direction, and I'm not in support of it. And I think that's what we're here to do is what is, I might go back to Noriko, the planner, and I read your comments, Noriko, and I'm reflecting on them now. But isn't there a ratio or a percentage of frontage here that should be looked at also? And why are we talking about a forgiveness of 100% of trees along the frontage? And it feels like there's about $100 of landscape plant material being proposed here. I don't understand. It's not a place I want to live or pass by.
Yeah, is there, you know, I agree with Sean. I mean, it almost, you know, there's no vertical elements. You know, I know visual display is important to the dealerships, you know, and sometimes shade trees can block, but even if that roadway or in between those display pads that are out on the island areas, if those had some vertical palms or date palms, and then you had them back, you know, in the planting pockets on the, I'll call it, I guess it would be the south side of that drive aisle, you know, you start to create kind of a boulevard effect down through there, and it provides shade. You can see visibility of the cars underneath those trees. And I think they did a nice job of it, you know, at the Porsche dealership and BMW. Now they don't have them out into the frontage island out there, but, you know, moving forward, I think we could pick up on that theme and bring it down to this other, you know, end of the dealership projects.
I think carrying that a little further, there's 2 cars, excuse me, displayed near the sidewalk outside of the building, excuse me, and both of those are in prime places that could be landscaping, especially the one that's at the northwest corner of the property next to the handicap spots. And then that one single car that's up above the build, that's up to the east of the building where that round, I guess it's a turnaround, is shown. If those 2 cars became planters. I know you want to display as many cars as you can, but still, we don't want to have this just be a solid concrete jungle. So I think looking at picking up some planting in other areas would be important.
Mm-hmm. There's got to be some more creative ways to present some landscape and soften this project and these hard materials. I looked down at Rancho Mirage, and in a lot of ways, and I'm fairly involved with that city on some levels and projects, and they would never go for this. And I see what they've done with some of their car dealerships in town and some creative ways on which they're able to get some trees away from some of their display vehicles. And I know it's not perfect, and they've got some trees intermixed, and I'm sure they have detailed nightmare problems I hadn't considered until tonight. But I think a lot of what we're talking about is customer parking, which I can't imagine they're there for lengthy periods of time where there's mountains of bird feces piling up on their car either. I don't know. It just feels wrong direction.
Excuse me, Dan, I think I saw you were wanting to make a comment.
Yeah, I think the building itself is nice looking, certainly an improvement over what is currently there. But on that island where you're parked, you're talking about those two cars in those like half circles. I live close to this dealership and I drive by it almost every single day. And there's not one car in each one of those half moon shaped things. There's two cars, sometimes three cars. They're parking the cars off the dirt as well. So that's not landscaped. It should be landscaped, but they're parking these expensive cars, even Mercedes, $100,000 cars in this dirt. And it looks like a jumbled parking lot. I'd rather see it landscaped, like Tom said, with some palm trees and date trees or palm trees or something, just to give it some anchoring and some height. I think that's a great opportunity to add some greenery right there.
And they could even do downlighting from the palm trees, on the vehicles. And
I think that's an opportunity. It make the cars shine, in my opinion. It's not a missed opportunity, or as it would be without the landscape.
Well, it would look better too if there's one car and not two cars, or possibly trying to squeeze three cars into that little spot. If you had one car, one tree, and the car is lit, made it look special. I mean, I'm a huge car guy. I'm probably one of their best customers, honestly. And it looks junky along that boulevard right there. They need to reduce the number of cars parked on that median and add some trees.
Mr. Chairman.
John.
I have a question. It's just kind of from an operational level. It's a question for you. I think that Tom Dosey's suggestion and sensitivity about the whole being greater than the sum of the parts is intriguing. And how, from where we are today discussing this project and looking for a response from us, how could that happen?
I'm not sure how to answer, John.
No, that's fine. But that's the fish to fry here is bigger than this one building.
Yes, and I think we have a unique opportunity because all of these buildings are in one ownership. Yep. And it is basically a auto mall, if you will.
Correct.
The landscaping is the one thing that can give it some uniformity and some character along the street. So I think this might be our last chance to be able to get a cohesive landscape development along that street. So I think it would certainly be something that I would support making as part of this approval, if it's an approval at all, but this project.
It almost needs a larger study than what we have in front of us here. And I just had a couple other comments about, I realize much of this from a marketing standpoint comes from on high at a corporate level, fine. But you have to be careful that these things don't look like they could be dropped into any city. You could basically take this building for environmental reasons and turn it around 90 degrees, 180 degrees, and you still have the same impact of solar heat gain. And it's as though there's nothing that fully recognizes the street, fully recognizes the rhythm of these different dealerships, and offers a soft buffer. It is an experience problem and an aesthetic problem. It's just sort of like a sea of concrete that these glass boxes sit in. So there you go. I just think that it could be so much better.
Thank you. Any other comments? A comment that I would make, and it's really, John got me thinking about this, is the north side of the building, which faces the street, being completely glass makes sense and doesn't have a solar gain issue. Right. And that's showing your product to the people passing by on the streets. For the entire east side and entire west side to be glass does not make sense, especially hearing that on the west side of the building, you have to lower blinds for half the day, so it's going to look like a solid wall anyway. And then on the east side of the building, you have to do that in the afternoon, which takes away the effect of a glass box. So again, I understand too the corporate dictates of how this happens. So I think if there's any way to mitigate our concerns about the lack of attention to solar control in the desert, it could certainly be helped by having a much stronger approach to landscaping that can soften the building and create a more appropriate product for Palm Springs. If we have no other comments, do we have a motion?
I just have one more question. Narika had in there kind of some conditions regarding the landscape. Would this, Narika, be an opportunity to build on that? And, you know, I'd be happy to sit with another member, you know, on a subcommittee to kind of review this, get the whole street frontage there and see what we can come up with.
If I might just interject at this moment, just to say, you know, I think that the ability of the committee to condition really needs to be limited to this property only procedurally. I don't think that we have the ability to look at extending conditions beyond this property.
I was afraid you'd say that.
Sorry, I was listening intently and thought, let's let the discussion play out and then I'll burst the bubble. But
I think we knew.
Okay, knowing that, do we have a motion?
I'll take a stab at something.
Sure, Dan.
I'd say that we have them come back and restudy this with bringing a better landscaping plan back to the table.
Do we have a second to that?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, may I add an amendment to that? As part of the restudy to address issues of solar heat gain, mitigation of solar heat gain, and a differentiation of building orientations.
Dan, are you comfortable with that as being part of the motion?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I might want to just amend that we're talking about the north and the east and the west, you know, the corners also. That we're not just talking about the north face. Like there's an approach to this building, and it's not just the north islands that we're talking about. That we're talking about some improvements.
Oh, whole building.
Yes, including landscape.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Do we have a second to the motion amended?
I'll second that.
Second by Tom Dosey. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. I'm going to suggest we take a 5-minute break. We're going to have a long item next, I think, which is, well, let me just finish going through new business. Item number 5 was moved to the consent agenda, so that has been approved. We're now going to move on to item number 6, Avalon Development, and let's take a 5-minute break before we get to that project. Are we ready to re-adjourn?
This meeting is being recorded.
We are ready.
Thank you. We are going to move ahead now with the completing the January 17th, 2023 meeting of the Architectural Review Committee. Under new business, we're at item number 6, a request by Avalon 1150 LLC for the approval of final development plans for 191 single-family residential units on 40-foot and 45-foot wide lots located within the Phase 2 section of the Mirror development located at 801 Sunrise Way. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the ARC. So again, this application was submitted by Avalon 1150 LLC for development plans for 191 homes within the 40-foot and 45-foot lots. This
Edward, could you swap your presenter view? Sorry, you have, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, is it better?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So again, my apologies for that. So again, this is part of a final plan development district. So just a very brief background, right? So plan development district involves 2 review processes. The first one is the preliminary, where you look at the development standards, the massing, the height, and other development standards, and not so detailed architectural presentation before the Planning Commission, the City Council, and then the ARC. But ever since we've changed the review process, the final development plans first goes to the Planning Commission for a substantial conformance review, meaning that the project stays the same as was originally approved at the preliminary stage. So what is before you tonight is to look at the architecture, the design, the materials, and then the colors and landscaping, and any other additional condition that may have been imposed on the project when it was presented to the Planning Commission for substantial conformance. And on that point, I'd like to point out that it did go before the Planning Commission in October of 2022, and it was unanimously approved. By finding that the project was in substantial conformance, not only with the plan development district, but also with the Mirror design guidelines and landscape design guidelines. There was one recommendation. It wasn't a condition, but it was a comment made by the Planning Commission. We'll get back to that later as I do the presentation. So this is the overall site plan of Mirror I'm sure most of the ARC members are familiar with this site as of now. These homes or these lots to the south of the site were presently presented to you, and you review and approve them. These were by Woodbridge Homes, by Gallery, by Christopher Homes, and again to the southeast of the site. Woodbridge has second set of their homes, which has been completed by now. Most of these homes have been completed, and most of them are also have been occupied. So what is before you tonight is within phase 2 of the Mirror development. If you recall, by July of 2002, I presented another set of final development plans by the same applicant, Avalon. And Avalon is a subgroup of Freehold, which is the master developer for Mirror. So, but the items before you tonight are mostly to the north and the southeastern part of the site. That's what before you tonight as part of the phase 2 for Avalon, or by Avalon, I should say. So again, this is very specific to the sites and to the location where these homes will be located. As I mentioned, they will consist of the 40-foot lots that will be to the southerly part of the site, and then 45-foot lots to the on the northerly part of the site, which form as part of the boundary areas. So you may ask, how come we have 45 foot to the north and 40 to the south? That is because of the restriction that the Maryland design guidelines and the condition imposed on the project when it was originally approved by the City Council, whereby the homes and the units on the boundary or the edges of the sites are limited to single-story homes. So there is height restrictions in those areas. So this is just a more specific plot plan of the 40-foot wide areas. The 40-foot wide lot will consist of mostly two-story buildings, and the 45-foot lots will be single-story buildings. So this is a breakdown of what is before you tonight. So a total of 191 homes will consist of 3 floor plans designated as Plan 1, Plan 2, and Plan 3. There are 2 different floor plans, and there will be 2 elevation types, each of them designated as A and B. On the mass and scale, plans 1, 2, and 3 are single stories, and 4 and 5 are 2 stories. So the 40-foot wide lots, again, will range from, their sizes will range from 1,878 square foot to 2,000 square foot in total, and those are 2-story buildings. The 45-foot wide lots will range from 2,184 square foot to 2,470 square foot, and these are 1-story buildings. So on this particular item, when it was first presented to the Planning Commission way back in July, I believe, it was recommended that a subcommittee be formed to review the initial submittal. That subcommittee was made up of members of the ARC and Planning Commission. It was member John Walsh and member Robert Rotman from the ARC, and member Michael Hochbein, and the chair from the Planning Commission. They reviewed the submittal, and comments they were generally pleased with the presentation, because the applicant had mentioned that based on the comments received on the ones that was presented to you in July of that year, they took cues from those comments and applied those to these sets that are before you tonight. And I can also report to the ARC that the comments that were made by the subcommittee have been incorporated into the plans. So I did attach, it's an attachment, which is attachment number 3 of your memo that summarize those comments from ARC and the one from the Planning Commission when it went before them in October. So, Mr. Chair, there are about 102 slides, but I'm just going to give you a brief summary because most of them they take exactly the same cue based on what I presented or what I explained in my previous slide, meaning that all the plans, I have 3 plan types, 2 floor plans, and their elevation. So it is consistent with all of the with the 40 and the 45-foot lots. So I do not want to bore you down by going through all the slides or all. These are very consistent and the same as the exhibits that were sent to you. If you notice, there were 4 of them, 2 for the 40-foot lots and then 2 of them for the 45. It is the exact same exhibits and designs that you will find that I have on the slides. So I'm going to be very brief, but I do want to go through a few slides before I will ask for questions that you might have of staff or for the applicants. They are also here tonight, but the applicants and their teams of architects are here tonight. So first is the first floor plan. This is on the 40-foot lot. It is a 3-bedroom with a loft and 3.5 bath. It has a built-in 2-car garage. And again, this is a 40-foot lot with 2-story buildings. So the total square footage for the first floor is 1,509 square foot, and the second floor is 708 square foot. And so the total design area is 2,227. some comments were made on the floor plans during the initial review by the subcommittee. And as I mentioned, the applicant has incorporated all those comments into their designs. This is just a front view of the elevation for Plan 1A and also this color scheme. So in your booklet, you will see the color scheme proposed by the applicant, and I might also add that those color scheme are consistent with the Miralon design guidelines and consistent with the direction that the Planning Commission gave earlier last year when they asked that those colors be updated since the Miralon design guidelines was approved way back in 2016. They did that, it was presented to the Planning Commission and approved. So the colors that you're seeing tonight and the materials have been earlier on presented to the ARC and the Planning Commission. They were approved. This is the rear. One of the comments made by the subcommittee was to ask for the shading elements on the buildings. So they've added them, but the one to the main part here will be, I will talk more about that as we go on, but I just want to point out that the applicant did respond and included those. One of the other comments made was that this area, although it will be on, it is a shared use easement here, the initial presentation was flat and didn't have much articulation. The applicant came back, used colors and reveal and additional windows and more overhangs on all the planes to improve the side views, both left and the right. And of course, this is the 3D drawing of Plan 1A. So it also has a color scheme of how it would look like, including the landscape, the placement of the pool in the rear, and yeah. And one of the other comments made was a shade over the entryway, as you can see, that has been included. So these are just the standard elevations, the front, the rear, with the optional cover that I mentioned earlier. So like this one here will be optional in some buildings, and this is the standard. This is how they will look at. So the applicant and their team of architects will speak more on this when they make their own presentations. As far as development standards are concerned, these are all consistent with the approved setbacks, the massing, the height, the coverage, the maximum coverage. These are all, they are not asking for any deviation at all from the established development standards for Miralon design guidelines. Again, this will be the color scheme of the elevations. This is how they will look like. And these are more elevations. So this was what I was referring to earlier. This was how they looked like originally, but the revised one has more articulations than the original ones. And these are just the sections of that plan. So this is how Plan 1B will look like on the front street, on the street view, and then of course the color scheme. The garage is consistent with what was approved with the Miralon design guidelines. And this slope roof was also part of the original approval by the Planning Commission and of course the subcommittee. One of the comments that the Planning Commission did not see to be an appealing part of the original submittal was the excessive numbers of slope roof, but that has been greatly revised, and the number of slope roofs in the whole presentation or the whole submittal has been greatly reduced and were acceptable to both the subcommittee and the Planning Commission. This is the rear view of that same elevation, Plan 1B. And this is the 3D drawing for that same plan type. And this is just the elevations, this color scheme. More of the elevations. And this is color scheme of the elevations. So now we're going to plan 2. So in this case, there is a slight difference in the size, but also it is a 3-bedroom, total of 3-bedroom, a loft, and 3.5 bathroom, a built-in 2-car garage. The first floor on this one is 1,458 square foot. The second floor is slightly bigger than the first one I showed you. That is 1,216. So the whole design area is approximately 2,664 square foot in size. This is how that floor plan will look like from the street. This is the rear. And this is the 3D drawing. More elevations shows how it will look like. This has an option of covered area. This is how it will look like. This is standard. So I guess the ARC may have the applicants speak more to the options and versus the standard. But this is how the front elevation will look like. This is the color scheme of that elevation. Again, the height, the overall height that is consistent with development standard. The maximum here is 24 foot. These are the side, left and side elevations. This is how the color scheme will look like. And this is plan 2B of that same floor plan. This is how the front street view will look like. This is the rear. This is the 3D drawing. And these are just the elevations of that same floor plan. These are the side elevations, color scheme of the same side elevations. And here is the floor plan number 3. In this case, it is a 4 bedrooms, it has a loft and a 4.5 bath with a built-in 2-car garage. On the first floor on this plan is 1,515 square foot. The second floor is 1,352 for a total of 2,867 square foot. This is the front view on 3A. This is how it will look like. This is this one right here. And this is the rear. So if you have the page of the color scheme page open, you will see that this is consistent with number 8. And this is the 3D drawing of the color scheme. And these are just the elevations, the front and the rear. This is the color scheme of that same elevation type. And this is the left and the right side elevations. Again, the applicant did respond to the comments from the subcommittee by breaking up the wall that was previously flat. This is how it would look like with color scheme number 8. And this is just on the 3B, plan 3B of plan number 3 is how the front will look like on the street view. And this is the rear. And the 3D drawing, more elevation of that same floor plan, the color scheme, and the left and the right side elevations. And this is the color scheme of that same side, the left and the right elevations. So this is this is a combination of the different types of plans from the street view and from the rear. So the top is the front, of course, and then the back, the rear on the bottom type is the rear street scene. This is the color material, the color scheme. It consists of color materials for different types of each building. And this is the landscape. This is a typical landscape for the front yard areas. It is consistent with what the Miralon design guide, the landscape design guide called for, the number of trees, the number of bushes, and the type of DG materials to be used. This is all consistent with it. Just more of it. It is very similar with what you previously saw back in July 5th of 2002, except that those were placed or located on 50-foot lots. So, Mr. Chair, that will conclude the presentation on the 40-foot lot. The 45-foot lot, the difference is that those are mainly single-story buildings, and they will be located in this area, which is the northerly-most part of the southeast part of Miralon, and some area in the southeast part of Miralon development. So this is specifically where they will go. These are the plot plans. And this is the floor plan. So in this case, it is also a 3-bedroom and a 2.5 bath, also has a 2-car garage and a maximum of 1,707 square foot in total area. So this is the plan view, the street view, street view of that floor plan. And here is the rear view with color scheme number 2. This is a 3D drawing, the color scheme number 2. And these are just the elevations for the front and the rear. And to the side of it, we show you the color scheme. So these are the side elevations. So to the left, we show you how it will just the regular elevations, and then to the right is this color scheme, how it would look like when painted. This is plan 1B. And this is the rear view of that same plan. This is a 3D rendering of it. And these are just the elevations and then the color scheme. So, Mr. Chair, at this stage, I would like to pause on the, maybe go back to show you the landscape plans on this one. These are all the same, the exact same materials as what is in the materials and the exhibits that are presented to you. And of course, the responses, the response from the applicants on all the comments from the subcommittee and the planning commission. Again, that was attached. It's attachment number 3 in your staff memo. Yeah, this is what I would love to show. This is the street scene of the 45-foot lots. It shows which plans and their plots. So in this case, you have starting with plan 3B, plan 1A, 2B, 1A. So it shows the mix of the lots. So this is the front on the top, and then on the bottom is the rear. And this is just how the landscape would look like, landscape, and then the wall and fence legend. Again, this is also on in your exhibits. These are the wall materials and the fence materials, the type of blocks that would be used and the type of steel that would be used. And these are the frontier typical landscape. It's very similar to the one you saw way back earlier last year, these are the focus lots. So they tend to have more landscaping on the side. And again, this is another legend of the landscape. So this is what we will review when it is time, when construction documents are submitted. So this is the model area where this will be their staging area, parking and whatnot. So this will be the first 3 models to be built. It will consist of all the 3 plan types, 1, 2, and 3. So, Mr. Chair, that we conclude staff's staff presentation. So our recommendation is for the ARC to find that the final development plans are in substantial conformance with the preliminary plans and approve this project as submitted. So I'm available to answer your questions. As I mentioned earlier, the applicant and their team of architects are also present to make any presentations to you or to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Edward. Questions from the committee for staff? Edward, I have a question. On the floor plans where it shows the driveways, they're just indicated as one solid color. But then when you go back to that landscape plan, see there, that driveway is just a solid color. And go to the landscape plan. Shows the driveways of multiple colors and different geometric divisions. Which are we going to be getting?
So this is the accurate one. So I don't know if, Mr. Chair, if you've been opportune to visit Miralon lately. So the Miralon design guideline does call for this type of driveways approach. So they have different types of design. They have decorative pave, not on all. Some of them have 3 bands as this one, some have 2 with different designs on them. So it is not just as solid as some of the floor plans show. No, all of them have different types of decorative pavements on them.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions from the committee for staff? Okay, I know that the applicant is present. Could you give us your name and a presentation of the revisions to the project?
Sure. This is Brad Schuckart. I am representative from Freehold Communities, the developer of Miralon. And I'm not the expert here. So I will let Dan Weibel from Robert Heide Architects, who designed not only these, but the 50-foot wide lot architecture that Edward referenced earlier that this committee approved back in July. So having said that, and apologies if Edward, you already covered this, but my audio was out for the first quarter of your presentation. It may strike the committee as somewhat odd that the 45-foot wide lots, the architecture on the 45-foot wide lots are all single story and the 40s are all 2-story. And that's simply a function of a settlement agreement. This project, when it was originally entitled, a suit was brought, and the accommodation that the then developer made was to limit the height of buildings on the edge of the property to single story. So that's kind of drives the design here to some great extent. So I'm happy to jump in and answer any questions that are specific to the developer or add my 2 cents, but I don't want to take up any more of Dan's time. So I will stop talking now and let him either share his screen if Edward, I don't know who's actually sharing screens.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I can stop sharing mine. If Dan, do you have something to share?
No, we can use your screen, Edward. I think this works. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Dan Wavell. I'm with Robert Heide Architects, and Colin Liu from our office is joining me as well. As Brad alluded to, the designs here for the 40 and 45-foot wide product stemmed from our successful outcome with the 50-foot product. So it's a mid-century design with a combination of flat roofs with overhangs, flat roofs with parapets, and gradually sloping roofs, 2 and 12. There's a fair amount of glass. We've provided accent materials, you know, siding in limited areas. We've provided eyebrows over windows to provide some shade, but also give some relief to the elevations. And on the 2-story product, the 40-foot wide product is all 2-story, and it gets a larger square footage. However, we've made some attempts to soften the effect at the street frontage by not stacking second floors over the first floors on the front intentionally and keeping them to the back half of the first floor to minimize the impact on the street. A unique aspect of the 40-foot product as well is that these back up to open space and green space. So when you flip through these slides, the axonometric views will show a gate that gives you access from your backyard directly onto that green space where we can. This was a request from the Planning Commission, and of course we incorporated it into our designs. You can see the gate right there towards the rear yard. All of these 40-foot wide product, they all live out to the rears. They have the spool areas out in the rears. Both the 40 and 45-foot wide product take advantage of a reciprocal use easement, whereby you sort of live out to one side of the house and you're looking at a blank wall of your neighbors. So that's why there's always I'll call it a dead wall on one of these elevations, because that's intentionally supposed to be private. There you go. And these dead walls, to make them somewhat aesthetically pleasing and not too harsh, we've provided some relief by popping out a portion of it 4 inches to give it some shadow effect. We put some clear story glass in up high, so there's not any privacy concerns. And then in the case of the 40-foot wide product, we painted it an accent color. The 45-foot wide product is all 1-story, and Brad explained the reason for that. But a unique aspect of the 45-foot wide product is not only are we getting single-story living, but we're able to put the pool in different locations. So Plan 1 will have the pool to the front. Plan 2 will have the pool to the rear. Here's Plan 1 with the pool in the front. Plan 2 will have the pool to the rear, and then Plan 3 will have it to the side in the middle. Similar aesthetic as the 40-foot wide product. And that's, I mean, there were some specific comments that Planning Commission brought up that I can certainly go into one by one, but rather than tie up everybody's time, I can certainly open it up for questions and happy to answer them.
Thank you. Committee members, questions for the applicant?
I just have a quick question. With these site plans, and maybe if you just go back to a site plan, are you showing locations for, AC units, and how does that work within those easements, or just some of the utility areas?
We do. So you can see here on this floor plan that back right corner is where we would propose to locate the AC. It's still on that owner's property, but it's part of that side yard, so that you don't, if it were on the other side of the house, that adjacent neighbor would be staring at your AC unit going on, running the whole time.
And there would probably be more than one, or just is one sufficient for this square footage?
We're planning on just one, given the size of the square footage. This is only 1,700 square feet. Admittedly, it's been some time, and I'm not sure if the 40-foot product has a need for two. I think we limited them to one unit. We were able to keep the square footage in a range that only required one unit.
Okay, thank you.
Dan, I have a couple of questions just for clarification. On a number of the buildings, you call out siding, but you don't indicate what the siding is. What are your thoughts for what is going to be the material for those sidings?
So we have a couple of different siding types. One, I would call it a fiber cement type siding with a thick enough profile where you get a shadow line to it. It might be a channel lock type detail. There's another siding that's called out as space siding, and that was a request, I think, from Planning Commission. It was there are a couple of the elevations we added it, and I was going to treat it as a vertical dimensional piece, call it a 2x4 or 2x6, but treat it like a rain screen. So you could actually see between the two pieces of siding and get that shadow relief. Either material is going to be a synthetic material. It won't be real wood.
Okay. And then you call out aluminum sunshades, which are the 24-inch deep panels that are just cantilevered from the building. And then you also call out canopies, entry canopy or rear. And on the canopy detail, it looks like the fascia has some sort of a stair stepping to it, or is that a gutter on there? And then on the aluminum sunshade, I assume it's a metal framework, but then the material that encloses it, is it a solid metal or is it an open sort of fabric metal?
So a couple of points on that. The eyebrows we're envisioning a prefabricated piece that gets bolted to the structure. It would not retain water on the top side. It would be some kind of perforated screen, so I don't have issues with drainage and water dripping over the side. Its purpose is to provide some sun relief. The question about the fascia, yes, it is a step fascia. That stepping is a result of the built-up fascia and not a gutter.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant from the committee? Okay, at this point is an opportunity for the public to make comments. Do we have anybody from the public who would like to make a comment on this particular project?
Hi, I'd like to make a comment on a previous item, which I wasn't aware that was being approved tonight. And I don't know where the appropriate time to talk about that is.
We'll have to wait till we finish this particular item.
Okay, very good.
No public comments. Okay, committee members, discussion, thoughts? I would say that I think this project has had some really significant improvements to it over the time. I think the applicants have really listened to the comments from the Planning Commission and from our committee. And certainly there's some minor details that will still need to be worked out. But in general, I think it's come together quite well. Any, John Walsh.
Mr. Chairman, I would concur in having participated in the subcommittee. There was great reception to, to some extent, these are subjective viewpoints in terms of the aesthetics. And they have integrated them. And it has added it looks to me as though they have added a level of refinement to some of the detailing. And it is always a challenge with this type of mass housing to get some level of consistency to the floor plan, consistency to the scale, and yet not let it be too planar and too uninteresting.
Thank you. Other comments? Tom, did you see anything in the landscaping that was of a concern to you? I know we've looked at it before and it kind of matches the other projects.
Yeah, I looked at their overall master legend and it's all desert appropriate. Sometimes, you know, along the street frontages, it is difficult with utilities and utility easements along that area to get your trees in and the spacing, but it certainly is appropriate palette for that area.
Thank you. Dan, any comments?
I don't have anything to add.
Great. Sean, anything?
Just along the landscaping, maybe a comment or two. I thought on the original plans for this, we had talked about 2 trees along the street frontage for each property. And I maybe kind of wanted to ask Ed this when questions came up for staff. Ed, I thought this came up last time because I remember we talking about utilities and that there being a challenge in that sort of front area along the curb, but I remember trying to squeeze them in here and there where we could, particularly on corner lots. I remember it coming up again, and now I see 1 tree per lot.
The question came up before, and I referred you to what the specific plan says. I don't have it in front of me, and I don't have it. I was trying to look for it if I can find it on my computer here, but I don't know, I haven't looked. But it is, we looked at it. We also looked at it at the subcommittee level. They are consistent with what the Miralon landscape plan calls for. If you recall the last time when the issue of a tree and the utility areas came up, and there was also a specific condition that they met even before any of the builders came on board. So they are consistent with not only the design guideline, but also the condition of approval that was placed on the Miralon development by the engineering department. So it is consistent. The issue we had the last time was, and I brought that up to your attention, that the focus lot areas, which are usually on the corner lot, are specifically called out in both the architectural and the landscape design plan. So that the very first time when this came before you, I made it known to you that they were not consistent with it, in that it was scantily landscaped. But since that time, they have addressed it. So this is consistent with the Miralon landscape design plan.
Okay, thanks, Ed.
You're welcome.
And you know, Sean, I would think that especially on the 40-foot wide lots, you've got a 20-foot wide driveway, a 4 or 5 foot wide entry walk. I think there's physical only room for 1 tree on those lots unless they're stacked front to back.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I might have suggested a small pygmy, or, you know, it could be a yucca, it could be a moon lagoon or something else to sneak in there. But it's not something I want to hang my hat on. It's a 3 or 4 for me right now.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, can I say something real quick?
Who is that? Mr. Robinson?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to thank the ARC and then the subcommittee members, Mr. John Walsh and Mr. Robert Rotman. They were very, very helpful. I called them many, many times. I bugged them with emails. And when I needed their presence at the City Hall to join me in looking at the materials, they never hesitated. So I'm very grateful.
Well, I think we all are also, because these could have been an all-nighter.
Yes.
Had it not been for that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion?
John?
Okay, I would move that we approve this project as submitted and thank the applicant for being so responsive to the comments from both the Planning Commission and our committee. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, Freehold.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Question for Chris. We have had motions and acted on all the items on the agenda. Does that mean all the items are closed, or do we consider further comments?
Procedurally, it does mean that the items are closed. It would be unusual to take additional comments, but that would ultimately be your call, Mr. Chair.
My feeling would be that we have acted and voted on each of the items on the agenda, and that the items have been decided and the discussions are closed.
I would just add that you did open to public comment, in accordance with the agenda, and no one spoke at that time.
The only thing I would say is 2233 North Vista.
Sorry, sir, the chair needs to yield the floor.
Okay, all right.
If you're being granted the opportunity to speak.
And I'm afraid that we have discussed and voted and complete, so that the agenda is now complete. Planning Director, any comments that you have for the committee?
I did want to revisit the item of in-person meetings, and I think that this was discussed at our last meeting in December. It's an evolving conversation, but I am looking for the committee to make a determination on when you do want to go back to in-person meetings. And so for some context, the City Council had determined in the fall that each individual board and commission could make a decision on whether they wanted to return to in-person meetings, at their own discretion. I think earlier in the fall, we had a lot of interest to do so. And I think as the winter came upon us, and we saw an uptick in, all sorts of respiratory viruses, not just COVID, but also flu and RSV and other things, I think many committees and boards have decided to stay remote for the time being. It is certainly your call. If you want to return to in-person meetings, we have space here at City Hall in the large conference room to do so. What we would be doing is a hybrid meeting where we would allow members of the public to join, as well as applicants to join remotely if they choose to do so. There is limited ability for members of the committee themselves to also join remotely, so we could have some members in person, some members remotely. What I would say about all of this is, again, it's an evolving situation. As I understand it, both the state and then, following that, the city legally are looking to rescind the emergency order that allows us to meet remotely, probably at some point at the end of February or in March anyways. So any decision that you make tonight, if you want to go back to in-person meetings, would likely be temporary for the February meetings. And then come March, it may be that we need to be back in person anyways as a result of the state emergency order expiring and us having to go back to in-person meetings anyway. So a long-winded way of me saying you have some limited ability to determine if you want to remain remote as we're doing now for the next 2 or 3 meetings, or whether you want to go back in person for our February meeting. And you can all direct me on what you wish to do.
Well, I myself find in-person meetings much more productive, that we can talk amongst ourselves a little easier and just see what each of us is looking at and talking about. I myself am comfortable with going back to in-person meetings. Now, Chris, just to clarify, did you say the hybrid would include that if one of our actual committee members wanted to be remote, that could still be with the rest of us in person?
That's right. So for the time being, until the emergency order expires, it could be, I think we'd want to see sort of a, perhaps a quorum of members present in the room if you choose to go remote, but other members could choose to be remote if they need to do so. As I understand it, when the emergency order expires under the Brown Act, we will need all members present in the advertised location, with limited exceptions for travel or health circumstances that would allow some members to be remote. But the expectation would be the majority of members would be in person again later in the spring.
Okay, committee members, how do you feel about in person? I'll just go down the list. Dan?
I'm good being in person. That works for
John?
me.
Yeah, I think there's a level of just kind of added responsibility to it. I think it is the way it should be, live, in person.
Tom Dosey?
I like the in-person meetings and the option for remote if needed.
Okay, Sean?
I'm torn. I like the flexibility of the remote. It allows me to do it from the Palm Springs office where I am now, the LA office. It also allows me to get on Google Earth, Google Maps, look at Street View, look at neighbors' houses, look at context. We don't see a lot of context in these exhibits. I can't tell what the neighbor's property looks like, other things around it. And I find myself, I've got a couple monitors up here and I'm looking and I'm researching and it's answering questions for me. So to me, yeah, I'm torn.
Well, you make a very good point, and I was thinking of that because I think there are certainly positive things to say about being able to have people on our committee who aren't available every day here in Palm Springs or every week, that we can get people that can join our meetings somewhat remotely as one part of the issue, but then the second part being the accessibility to other technologies to use during the meeting. And I think that the hybrid that they're talking about, where we could mostly be in person and have the capability for some of the committee members to be remote, might be the perfect solution to give us both options.
A hybrid.
Yep. Chris, does that answer your question?
I think so. So what I'm hearing is a desire to return to in-person meetings. We have, and this is the second item that I'll get to in a second, our calendar is being finalized, but our next scheduled meeting would be on February 6th. So what I'm hearing is that we should aim to hold that meeting in person in a hybrid format that would still have Zoom capability for those that need to participate that way. Does that sound correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we will do that. If there are any technological issues, we will sort them out and update you all before the posting of the agenda so that we all plan on where we need to be on the 6th.
Okay.
Thank you. The second item I have is related to finalizing our calendar. So I think because of the change in the council, we were a little delayed in finalizing the city council calendar for 2023. That was done at Thursday night's council meeting. I'm just taking one last review of our calendar for 2023. I think it largely is going to stay as it normally would with the first and third Monday of the month, with a couple of holidays in there that change things. There are two things that I want to flag right off the bat that I'm going to consider a little bit more, and then I'll probably circulate something for us to discuss at the February 6th meeting. The first is that the City Council have shifted some of their dates around, which results in combination with President's Day, February 21st, which is a Tuesday, would be when we would normally hold our second February meeting, but it is now also a City Council meeting night. So I would like to sort of avoid that double booking, not just for staff purposes, but also because, you and other members of the public may also want to participate in our City Council meetings. So that's one conflict. The other is June 5th, where we have a similar situation where the City Council meeting has moved to a Monday. And that may preempt our ARC meeting. So I'm probably going to circulate a draft calendar with some potential solutions to those two conflicts that we can then discuss and finalize at our February 6th meeting. And that's all that I have for updates.
Okay, and just so the committee knows, I asked Chris this afternoon before a meeting, when we have a big agenda like tonight's, and we have one particular item that might be really big, like Sean was right, that Freehold could have been an all-nighter, but luckily it wasn't. Could we have a special meeting for a particularly maybe cumbersome project? And he said that yes, we can do that as long as it's legally noticed. So I think just to give the committee a heads up, we're going to be getting a couple of meetings off. It sounds like we might need to schedule a meeting or two special. So just hopefully we can all have a little flexibility to be able to accommodate that.
And the other alternative, just to add to that, Mr. Chair, is sometimes the Planning Commission will do this. We've also started meetings earlier. I know that presents certain conflicts for not just you all, but also members of the public. So I think we have different ways of cutting that depending what the circumstance is. But we can certainly cross that bridge when we need to.
Yep, we'll just be flexible. Okay, everybody, thank you all very much. Happy New Year.
Quick item, quick question. I don't know if this is the time to bring it up, but going back to the item, which I think was item 5, with the car dealership.
Right.
And item 4, yeah.
Item 4, yep. Rightfully so, I think. We were told to keep our hands out of the off-property improvements or discussion. When is the time? Is this like a code enforcement thing? Because I think addressing medians and perhaps the evolution of how they have been kind of downgraded and not adhered to potentially earlier proposed and installed landscape plans over time, I think is worthy of discussion and some looking into, and potentially by this committee. And so just had a little note I wrote to myself when that item came up or when we voted on it. And so can we chat about that for a minute?
Yeah, and Sean, after we had our vote on that, I went back and I realized that the car displays that they have on the median are out of their property. And
I absolutely wondered that. Yes.
That should give us a reason to say you can't do that. That needs to be landscaped.
And who's giving them the right? Like, does the Public Works Department know that this is?
I don't think you ask, you just do it.
Wait a second. I thought their property line actually went all the way up to 111, and that median thing, that frontage street is actually their property.
No, look on the drawings that they submitted. You can see on the site plan that only 2 feet of that median is on their property and the rest of it is in the city right away.
Oh. Because they
that
use
would seem odd that frontage road private property would seem odd to me also, Dan.
Mr. Chair, if I may come, this is Edward Robertson.
Yes, Edward.
It appears to me, and I will, talk. I will have a meeting with the director tomorrow morning. But my recollection was that that frontage area was vacated by the city to them, and I will check on. I will check with the engineering department and then get back with you all as early as tomorrow or.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yes.
And I think to the broader conversation, I think we need to confirm where their property boundary is and how they are legally entitled to use that property. There's a few different mechanisms that could be allowing that, and that's something that we can look into and come back with more information on this specifically. On the broader issue of how we deal with the issues up and down, I would need to familiarize myself with what's going on there. But if it is an issue of them not complying with approved landscape plans, then that is a code enforcement issue that we need to deal with. If it is an issue of sort of historic approvals that perhaps were light on the landscape plans, then that obviously is a little bit harder to address. We would need to wait for those properties to come in and be redeveloped. So I don't know the solution there, but it would depend on what's actually going on.
Well, certainly I'm not suggesting some type of ex post facto enforcement of a new landscape idea, but it occurs to me that potentially there's not, where there was some type of proposed landscape that as Tom pointed out, I don't think exists there now. Or sorry, I think Dan pointed out that he drives by every day and there's cars parked on native terrain there. And yeah.
Not just on the little pads they created.
Yeah.
Well, if they're in the dirt, they're out there everywhere.
So we can probably do some digging into that. And again, address it through the appropriate channel, whether it's code enforcement or, even a conversation internally at the city, if it's city property, to see what we can do to sort of perhaps give some consistency and beautification along the city right of way.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
And discuss it.
Any other comments from the committee members? Okay. Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye.
Now.